positivity, motivation, never settle for average. You know how we do it over here. Go pick up some merch at BigHerc916.com. I want to ask you guys a question. Do you have faith? Do you believe in something higher than yourself? Do you believe in God, Jehovah, Jesus Christ, Allah? Do you believe in something that gives you purpose beyond just existing? You know, sometimes we just assume a lot of things in life and we operate on autopilot. We don't really think about our actions. It's as though we're just following where the wind blows until we get to what we assume to be our destination. But when you start thinking about something greater than yourself, something that gives you purpose, you start to question a lot of things, man. You start to question why certain things are the way they are and if you can change them. And a lot of people, I think, mistake faith for just wishing on a star and hoping something happens. But faith requires effort in order to get results. If you truly believe, then you also have to apply yourself. And I believe there is an energy beyond myself, something greater than myself. And I believe there is good and bad energies. And you can call it energy, you can call it entities, you can call it spirits. Um, I believe that there is a constant war going on here on the earth with good versus evil. And evil meaning things that you see that in retrospect let you know that there is good. Because when you hear about certain things in the news or certain things that have happened to what appears to be innocent people, you wonder, like, why does that happen to that person? What did they do to deserve that? What did a baby do to deserve what happened to that baby? Or why did that person do that to that child? And why were they allowed to do that? And some people say that, you know, God wouldn't allow things like that to happen if, you know, God was who they say he or she is. But for you to reflect on what you just saw, and like I said, there's an infinite spirit. And if you believe that that spirit that came into that body that experienced that, and who knows, maybe has been here multiple times, maybe that instance was there to have you reflect on what happened so that you could maybe change the direction you're going in, or reflect on something you did, or for you to learn a life lesson from that. But I believe that overall our purpose is good, but there are a lot of dark forces, and there are things that in order for us to learn, we have to witness to have a perspective. And it doesn't mean that God doesn't care, or, you know, he's left us to the um, the whims of humanity, but this is all a part of our, I believe, spiritual maturity. I used to think, when I was even a youngster, and uh, I used to find my grandmother's alcohol. My grandma used to drink, and I would find her bottles and pour them out, or I'd pour water in them. And we used to try to keep her sober. And alcohol to me is, it's a legal drug. It's one of the most addicting drug, and it's the most destructive drug out there. And people chasing that bottle, man, people wallowing in that spirit, it just slowly destroys you, man. And people get lost in that. But I used to always pray and you know try to figure out why, and how did something like that have so much control over her. And I never got an answer from God. God never explained why a person so good, so nice, so special, why they were a slave to the bottle, why they were addicted to the bottle. And I believe all those years of drinking led to, later on, a deterioration of the body, which led to a shorter lifespan. But just praying alone didn't really do anything. Pouring out the alcohol, it just delayed the drunken stupor. But my point being is that things that happen in life sometimes don't make sense. Sometimes it seems like you try to do the right thing, but somehow your efforts don't equate to what you expected them to be, or you don't get the results you wanted. And it's frustrating. It questions your faith, and it makes you wonder, like, why even try? But you can't give up, man. I know there's times you want to give up. There's people that you have in your life that you feel are a burden, and you want to give up, and you try to help them. Now, sometimes people have to, I don't know, hit beyond rock bottom before they can actually see the light. And even with my grandmother, I don't think it was till after I got locked up and got out that she really just stopped drinking like that, to where she would drink and just go into these stupors. But I interviewed her before she passed, man, and she talked about, in her recollection of me, that she prayed that I would come back, that I would find my way, because she thought I was just lost in prison, man. She really had, you know, felt like I was gone in my being, in my mental state, for all the things that I did, and to keep going back and forth, to jail. And I love my grandmother for that, because she never gave up hope. But it took me finding the faith within myself, to find purpose in myself, for me to change my behavior. And so you, in order to change, have to look into your look into your soul. You have to look into your beliefs and what you consider your morals, and find your truth, And once you find that truth, you will find your purpose, you will find your calling, and you will look at life differently and maybe put the effort into what it is you really want to do, and what really makes you happy, what you feel gives you value. We all want to be valued, we all want to be loved, we all want to feel in some way accepted. We're grown, as we get older, but you're still a child at heart. And children, when you see a child playing with another child, the child doesn't know that child's Asian. They don't know they're Mexican. They don't know they're black. They don't know they're Caucasian. They're just kids, man. And whatever you teach that kid, they absorb like a sponge, and they learn from that. And so when a child starts going into a public system and getting indoctrinated, you see the changes, you see the behavior, you see the certain um, attitudes they take on, and that's something we have to be mindful of. And it's up to the parents that are cultivating these children, raising these children, to make sure these children have faith, these children have beliefs, these children have reverence for life, meaning that, hurting somebody for fun, or hurting somebody for doing this, or treating people a certain way, is not a good feeling. But we have to work on that as a human race, and um, we have to have faith in something beyond ourselves. And it's all right to, throw some of these heavy, heavy, heavy choices or questions on God, man. Sometimes you can't carry them. You're not strong enough. Throw them God's way. Let God help you figure out the answers. Meditate on it. People say, a lot of things about certain things, and I'm not going to get into these particular subjects, but when you think about, like, when you making a choice, when you get on the freeway, for example, and you're driving, you have all these exits, you have 5 lanes, you have all these choices. You have just as many choices in life. When you're dealing with a situation, there's not just one option. There's so many different options, and you have to weigh out those options. Go right or left, forward or backward. Should I wear this or that? Should I go here or there? Should I pass on this? Should I question this? These are all things that you have to be aware of, but that could be life changing. Getting in a car with somebody, and you know that they're riding dirty, or going over to this party and these other guys are going to be over there, or getting involved with these dudes and they're bad news, and just all these different things, man. You got to really think about all your options, and hopefully somebody's along the way taught you certain certain foundational points that when you are in those, hopefully you can call upon those instilled values, and it will guide you in the right direction. I don't like hold my grandmother responsible for the choices I made, or lack of father for the choices I made. At the end of the day, my grandmother, my mom, my grandfather, they all gave me very good values. I just made bad choices, and a lot of those choices came from what I what I adopted outside the household. Outside the household, like your house is your sanctuary. Everything outside of that is free for all. And the only thing I could say is, like, maybe if I would have had a better guide with understanding the consequences of certain associations. That's the biggest thing. Knowing who and who not to consider friends, because a lot of people you consider your friend is not your friend, man. These people, they don't have your best interest. They don't have no faith. They don't care about morals or consequences, and they don't care about getting you caught up. So I think that was the biggest thing I didn't have. And then, like I said, having, if maybe having a father in that position to give me those life lessons would have made a difference. And I know when I see guys who had fathers that were good guys, it makes you think, like, what would have been the result had you had a father in your life. And you can't feel sorry for yourself. You got to be able to, like, recognize and move on, but it's just a conversation. And like I said, I share these because there's a lot of guys who have maybe been in the same situation, had an alcoholic family member, had a family that didn't have the best home training. Um, Maybe you didn't have a father. Maybe you had a mother who was just running the streets. There's all these different things. But if we have this discussion and we talk about faith, we talk about belief in God, we talk about values, we can help work through a lot of these things together. And that's what the big picture is about, is helping each other so we can become stronger and better people. So I share these things, man. I don't script them. I just talk off the top of my head. I don't know what I'm going to say a lot of the times. Um, it's not about the bling bling. It's more about things that are heavy on the heart. And some of these things I used to sit back and think about when I was on lockdown in prison and be like, man, if I was free, where would I be at right now? And I'm looking right now, I'm looking in the sky, I'm seeing the clouds go by, blue skies, it's quiet. I'm in my backyard chilling with my little puppies. And man, I feel blessed. And so I want to share those blessings with you guys, because your situation, who knows what your situation is. I know we all are going through it. A lot of people are going through it financially. They're dealing with um, relationships that are very um, just up and down. You're dealing with maybe family situations. Everybody's going through something, man. But if we share and try to figure out how we can help each other, because trying to do it by yourself, like I said, you can pray, you can meditate, but sometimes getting it out and finding other people and taking that burden, like, tossing it to God, or tossing it to Allah, or Jesus Christ, whoever you want to toss it to, but also finding other people to get that support. And I understand that's why some people, they go to church and they go to these, to the synagogue or different places to worship, to feel like they're a part of a community, because by yourself, it's a rough battle sometimes, man. And by yourself, man, it feels like, sometimes you're trapped. You're not trapped, but you feel like that, so you make bad choices, bad decisions. So yeah, man, call upon your faith, but also try to find you a community that has some good values and morals and some disciplines that you can help, that can help you, and that you can get involved with, that'll make you a better person. But at the end of the day, there is good and evil, and you just gotta find out, who you're dealing with, and if they're really somebody that's good, or if they're undercover evil, and just try to live the best life you can, man. I always tell you, man, you take freedom for granted, but there's so many beautiful things out here that you have access to that once you make a bad choice, you don't have access to any of it. Because somebody else controls all of that. So take care of yourself out there. God bless. BigHerc916. 916, and I would like to introduce you to Little Herc's Big Lessons. My wife and I decided to come out with a children's book series that encourages young children to be strong, to make good choices, and also teach valuable lessons. Lesson 2, Speak with Strength. At school, Little Herc's classmate Maria looked upset. The bigger kids were teasing her about her artwork. Hey, Little Herc said, stepping forward, Maria's art is awesome. Let's show some respect. The bigger kids shuffled their feet and walked away. Maria smiled at Little Herc. Thanks, Herc. You're always brave enough to stand up for what's right. Little Herc felt proud. Speaking up is what strong people do. You can pick up the book, link in the description.
Never
share
settle
with
for
your
average.
kids.
Go to BigHerc916.com and pick you up a hat.